Welcome back to Notes of Curiosity, exploring ideas that matter. I'm Alex.
I'm Eve.
All right, so ready to step into a world where animals talk, stage a revolution, and try to build their own society.
Sounds like a children's book, huh?
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss George Orwell's Animal Farm as just a simple fable.
But it's really so much more than that.
That's what we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
Animal Farm is actually a really powerful allegory.
An allegory for what, though?
It uses this animal revolution to critique totalitarian regimes,
Like which ones?
particularly Stalinist Russia.
So there's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Oh yeah, tons.
Okay, well, before we get to the revolution itself, let's talk about the author. Who was this George Orwell guy?
So George Orwell, that was actually a pen name.
Really?
Yeah, his real name was Eric Arthur Blair.
Huh.
He was a British writer and journalist.
Okay.
And he lived through some, well, pretty immense political upheaval.
When was this?
First half of the 20th century.
Got it.
So, he saw the rise of these totalitarian regimes firsthand.
Like Stalin's Soviet Union.
Ex-
That must have had a huge impact on his writing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Animal Farm itself, it was published in 1945,
Okay.
and it really reflects this, disillusionment he felt
With what?
with the Soviet experiment, like the betrayal of those socialist ideals.
So you're saying these animals on the farm, they're more than just cute talking creatures.
Right. They represent real-world figures and political factions.
So the farm itself.
That stands in for Russia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And each animal.
Represents a different player or a group in the Russian Revolution.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So you've got the pigs, right?
Okay.
They embody the Bolshevik leaders.
The ones who led the revolution.
Yes. And then you have the horses.
Okay.
They symbolize the hardworking but often exploited working class.
Ah, I see. So Orwell is using these animals to explore some pretty big ideas.
Yeah, exactly. The complexities of power, revolution, and just, the human capacity for both good and evil.
That is pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So let's get into the story itself.
Oh.
It all starts with a dream, right?
Yes.
Can you set the scene for us?
Okay. So the story begins with this wise old pig. His name is Old Major.
Old Major.
And he shares this dream he had, of an animal utopia.
With the other animals.
With all the other animals on Manor Farm.
Manor Farm, that's the name of the farm.
Right.
Okay.
And in this speech he gives, he describes this future, right? Where animals are free.
Free from what?
Free from human exploitation. They control their own destiny.
What does he actually say?
He says, and I quote, "Man is the only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever."
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Definitely a call to action.
So how do the animals react to this message?
Well, Old Major's speech, it ignites this fire in their hearts.
They're ready to revolt.
Yeah, they quickly embrace this whole vision.
What happens next?
So they learn this rousing song. It's called Beasts of England.
Beasts of England.
Yeah, and it becomes their anthem of rebellion.
A symbol of their longing for this better future.
Exactly.
But Old Major doesn't live to see the revolution actually happen, does he?
Sadly, no. He dies soon after.
Oh.
But his ideas, and that song they learned, it continues to inspire them.
So who takes over?
3 younger pigs step forward. Snowball, Napoleon, and Squealer.
Free pigs. Okay.
And they, kind of develop Old Major's vision into a system of thought.
And what do they call it?
Animalism.
Animalism.
Right?
Okay, so what does animalism actually look like? What are its core principles?
So the pigs, they create these 7 commandments of animalism.
7 commandments.
Yeah, like rules to guide their new society.
Ensure equality and freedom for all, right?
That's the idea.
What's the most important commandment?
The one that's repeated throughout the whole book.
Yeah.
All animals are equal.
That's the foundation of their rebellion.
Right. And their hope for a better life.
And they actually managed to overthrow their human oppressor.
They do.
How?
Well, they're driven by hunger, mistreatment,
Okay.
and that dream of a better future, So they rise up.
Against who?
Mr. Jones,
Who's Mr. Jones?
the neglectful farmer.
They drive him off the farm.
They drive him off the farm. It's a moment of pure euphoria for them.
I bet. A victory filled with hope and possibility.
Absolutely.
What do they do next?
They rename the farm
What do they call it?
Animal Farm.
Symbolizing their newfound freedom and autonomy.
Exactly.
So this sounds pretty idyllic, at least in the beginning. But we know from, just the fact that we're talking about this book,
Yeah.
that something goes wrong.
Definitely.
What are some of the early signs that this animal utopia might not be what it seems?
Even in those early days of the rebellion, there are these subtle hints.
Like what?
Well, you start to see the pigs taking more and more for themselves.
What do you mean?
Like, they claim they need the milk and apples for their brain work,
For their what?
for their brain work, arguing it's essential for running the farm.
Sounds a little suspicious.
Yeah, a bit.
Are the other animals buying it?
Well, there's this pig, Squealer. He emerges as their, chief propagandist,
Oh, okay.
and he plays a key role in justifying their actions.
And how does he do that?
Well, he's a master manipulator. He twists the truth, uses these clever arguments
To do what?
to convince the others that the pigs are acting in their best interests.
So Squealer is like the spin doctor of Animal Farm.
You got it. Shaping the narrative, controlling the flow of information.
Okay, so we have these three pig leaders. Snowball, Napoleon, and Squealer.
Right.
What are their personalities like? Do they agree on how the farm should be run?
That's where those cracks in their unity start to show.
Tell me more.
Okay, so Snowball, he's portrayed as this idealistic, energetic pig, full of grand plans
For what?
for improving the animals' lives. He's a passionate speaker, believes in education, progress.
So he represents the more idealistic side of the revolution.
Yeah, the hope for genuine equality and progress.
What about Napoleon?
Napoleon, he's more pragmatic. And, well, some might say ruthless.
So more of a doer than a talker.
Exactly. Less interested in lofty ideals, more interested in consolidating power.
What about Squealer? Where does he fit in?
Squealer, he's the ultimate pragmatist, always siding with whoever holds the most power.
A true politician.
You could say that.
Okay, so we have this tension brewing between Snowball and Napoleon. How does that play out?
It all comes to a head with the windmill debate.
The what?
The windmill debate. Snowball, he envisions this windmill as a symbol of progress.
A way to modernize the farm?
Yeah, and improve the animals' lives through technology.
This is pretty good.
Right. He argues it'll bring electricity, lighten their workload, make life easier.
Why would anyone oppose that?
Well, Napoleon does. He argues it's a waste of time and resources.
What does he think they should focus on instead?
More immediate needs, like food production.
Okay, but isn't there something else going on here?
What do you mean?
Isn't Napoleon just trying to undermine Snowball?
Oh, you're picking up on the underlying tension here.
Well, it seems like he's pretty power hungry.
Yeah, Orwell definitely portrays him as cunning and ambitious, working behind the scenes.
What's he doing?
While Snowball is busy with those grand plans, and speeches,
Yeah.
Napoleon is secretly training a litter of puppies.
Into what?
A fierce, loyal pack of dogs. He knows brute force will always win out over idealistic visions.
That doesn't sound good.
It's not.
So how does this power struggle actually end?
In a pretty dramatic way. During a farm meeting, Napoleon unleashes his dogs
On who?
on Snowball.
Oh, wow.
The dogs chase Snowball off the farm. It's the end of the debate.
And Napoleon takes control.
Absolute control. This marks a turning point in the story.
The dream of this egalitarian society is starting to crumble.
Exactly.
What happens next?
With Snowball gone, Napoleon consolidates his power pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He abolishes the Sunday meetings. Those were supposed to be, for open debate, democratic decision-making.
He's shutting down any form of dissent.
Basically. From this point on, Napoleon rules through fear, intimidation, and the threat of his dogs, of course.
What about those 7 commandments? Do they hold up under Napoleon's rule?
Well, that's where things get really insidious. The 7 commandments, supposed to be the foundation of their society. They start to get creatively reinterpreted
The principles of animalism are eroding.
as Napoleon tightens his grip on power. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll see how these changes on Animal Farm become even more drastic, really mirroring those terrifying totalitarian regimes throughout history. So Snowball's out of the picture now, and Napoleon's control over Animal Farm, it just keeps getting tighter and tighter. The pigs, under his leadership, they start making some pretty drastic changes, and it's becoming more and more clear that their vision for this farm, well, it's not exactly what everyone had in mind when they talked about animalism.
Yeah, no kidding. So what happens to all the other animals? How do they react to this, power shift?
Yeah.
And the fact that, well, their revolutionary principles are kind of going out the window.
Well, their experiences are all different and how they react, Orwell uses these individual stories to show the different ways, people respond to oppression, the complexities of living under this, totalitarian regime.
Makes sense. Let's start with Boxer, the workhorse. He's such a powerful symbol in this book. What's he all about?
Boxer, he embodies this idea of blind loyalty, unwavering dedication, the kind of thing, that totalitarian regimes really exploit. He's strong, hardworking, completely devoted to the cause, even when things on the farm start to, well, fall apart.
Yeah, he's got those mottos, right?
I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no matter what.
Right, shows his total faith in the leadership.
Yeah.
Even when, what they're doing goes against those animalism principles.
It's kind of sad reading about him, He just keeps pushing himself, thinking that if he works hard enough, it'll create this better future for everyone.
It's a classic example of how propaganda works.
So being deceived, right?
Totally. While the pigs are consolidating power, the workload for everyone else increases. Rations get smaller.
But Boxer doesn't see it.
He doesn't. Despite the hardship, he keeps believing Napoleon knows best. He even defends the pigs, when they take all the milk and apples.
The whole brain work thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So Boxer's like that segment of the population that's susceptible to propaganda, right? The ones who are easily manipulated with appeals to loyalty. Are there any other animals who aren't as, gullible?
Not all of them. Clover, the other workhorse, she represents a different kind of response.
Tell me about her.
She's not as strong as Boxer physically, but she's sharper. She's got this, quiet wisdom.
I remember that scene where she's looking at the Seven Commandments, trying to remember what they originally said, but she can't.
Yeah, it's like she's watching history being erased right in front of her.
Powerful stuff.
It really highlights how insidious propaganda is, how it can distort reality. Clover, she senses something's off, that the pigs are twisting the truth.
Did she do anything about it?
She tries to point things out. She asks Benjamin, "My sight is failing," she said finally. "Even when I was young, I could not have read what was written there. But it appears to me that that wall looks different. Are the Seven Commandments the same as they used to be, Benjamin?"
So she's aware that something's wrong, but she can't quite put her finger on it.
Exactly. And unlike Boxer, she doesn't just accept the pig's explanations.
Right. She doesn't buy into their whole authoritarian rule. What about Benjamin? The donkey, right?
Yeah, he's the cynical one.
The oldest animal on the farm.
Right, and he's seen it all. He's got this jaded view of everything.
What's his take on the whole situation?
He represents this kind of detached skepticism, like he's witnessed this cycle of power and oppression before, doesn't believe anything will really change.
What did he say?
He's got these cryptic pronouncements like, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey."
So he knows that history repeats itself.
Seems that way. He's resigned to it.
So he understands what's happening, but he's not going to fight it.
Yeah, he embodies a passive resistance, Refuses to get caught up in the revolution, but also doesn't buy into the dictatorship.
He sees through the lies, but keeps it to himself.
So, we've got Boxer's blind loyalty, Clover's unease, Benjamin's detachment. What about the other animals? Where do they fit in?
Well, the sheep, for example, they're portrayed as incredibly gullible, easily manipulated.
Oh, yeah. They're always chanting slogans, right?
Yeah, like 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and they're bleeding. It's almost like it's meant to drown out any critical thinking.
Like they've been completely brainwashed.
Yeah, they just follow the pigs.
Yeah.
Accept whatever squealer tells them.
They're the perfect tools for the pigs then, right? To maintain order.
Sadly, yes.
Oh.
And then there are the chickens.
Yeah. They get it pretty rough.
They do. They have to give up all their eggs.
What happens to the eggs?
The pigs sell them to humans.
Yeah.
It goes against one of the main principles of animalism, right? That animals shouldn't be exploited for their products.
It's the exact thing they were fighting against.
Exactly. And when the hens try to resist, what happens?
Their rebellion is crushed. Brutally.
What do the pigs do to them?
Napoleon, he declares them enemies of the state, cuts off their rations.
That's awful.
It is. 9 of them end up dying.
Just for trying to keep their eggs.
It shows how far Napoleon is willing to go.
To stay in control, yeah.
Yeah. The pigs, under his leadership, they've established a real totalitarian regime.
Fear, intimidation, propaganda.
It's all there.
Right.
They control information, manipulate the truth, use violence to silence anyone who opposes them.
It's scary how easily a revolution can go wrong, and how quickly the people in charge become the very oppressors they were fighting.
Exactly. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll see this descent into tyranny get even worse. The pigs really solidify their control and reshape Animal Farm in their image.
So things are not looking good for the animals, that's for sure. The pigs are in total control, and they're really starting to resemble those human oppressors they overthrew. What happens next? Like, how does it all end?
Well, the last part of the book is really where Orwell drives home that warning about totalitarian regimes. You see, the pigs, especially Napoleon, they become more and more like the humans they kicked out. It shows how power corrupts, no matter who's in charge.
We were talking before about the Hens Rebellion. What about, like, the use of force,
Hmm.
the manipulation? Does that get worse, too, as Napoleon tightens his grip?
Oh, absolutely. It escalates dramatically. The pigs, basically, they establish this like reign of terror, using the dogs to enforce their rules. They even start holding these show trials.
So trials, what are those?
They accuse other animals of conspiring with Snowball.
Snowball. But he's gone.
Right. Exactly. But he becomes this perfect scapegoat.
You mean, like, blame everything on him?
Exactly. It's a way to justify Napoleon's actions.
So even though Snowball's not around anymore, he's still useful to Napoleon.
Right. He's the enemy, the alternative they have to constantly fear. So during these show trials, they force animals to confess to crimes they didn't commit.
And then what?
A lot of them are executed, creates this atmosphere of fear, paranoia. Nobody dares to speak out.
It's like classic dictator moves, right?
Yeah.
Create an enemy, scare everyone, and then use that fear to justify being even more oppressive.
You got it. It's terrifyingly effective. Orwell, he writes, the animals huddled about Clover, not speaking. It was a moment of complete bewilderment. They had never seen anything like this before. Even the rebellion had not been so startling.
Wow. What happens to Boxer? You know, the one who's so blindly loyal.
Boxer's story is probably the most tragic part of the whole book. He just keeps working, believing in the cause. Even as he gets weaker, his body starts failing him. Then, one day, he collapses, completely exhausted. The pigs say they'll send him to the vet, get him treatment, but they don't.
No. Instead, they sell him.
Sell him? To who?
To a glue factory. It's a brutal betrayal. Shows how little they care about the other animals, even the ones who are loyal.
That's horrible. What did the other animals think? Did they realize what happened? Squealer, he comes up with a story. Says Boxer died peacefully at the hospital, praises his dedication. And most of the animals, well, they've been through so much, heard so much propaganda, they just accept it.
It's so sad. Boxer dedicated his whole life to the farm, truly believed in animalism. And in the end, he's betrayed by the ones he trusted.
It's a powerful lesson about blind faith and how ruthless people in power can be. They use people like Boxer, take their work, their loyalty, and when they're not useful anymore, they just get rid of them.
So what happens to Animal Farm itself? Do they ever achieve that utopia they were dreaming of?
Not even close. The farm, it does well materially, but it becomes this twisted version of what they were fighting for. The pigs, they start walking on two legs, wearing clothes, sleeping in beds. They drink alcohol, start trading with the human farmers nearby.
They literally turn into the enemy.
Exactly. And there's this one scene, one of the most chilling in the book, where the animals are looking through the farmhouse window and they can't tell the pigs apart from the humans.
Wait a minute.
Orwell writes, the creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which.
So the revolution failed. Completely.
It's this really powerful ending, leaves you feeling uneasy. And it's such a strong warning about power, about how easy it is to lose your freedom.
So what's the message here? For us, the readers. I mean, we don't live on farms run by talking pigs.
No, but Animal Farm isn't just about animals. It's this allegory. It's about power, about blind obedience, about how truth can be manipulated. It's a warning for every society, no matter their political system.
So it's a reminder to think critically, to question those in power, right? To watch out for propaganda.
Exactly. To be aware of how good intentions can be twisted, how revolutions can go wrong, and how important it is to protect our freedoms.
If you're looking for a book that'll make you think, challenge your assumptions, Animal Farm is definitely one to check out.
And it's incredibly relevant even today. I mean, think about it. We live in this age of information overload, political polarization. There are these authoritarian tendencies popping up all over the world.
Scary stuff. Well, we'll leave you with that to think about. The fate of the animals and the warnings in Orwell's book. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Animal Farm.
This is Alex and Eve.
Until next time, keep those notes of curiosity flowing.